Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
Spring practice continues. Women's basketball is done dancing, and the transfer portal has hit the hardwood. We've got all the latest surrounding Virginia Tech sports on episode 478 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Wednesday, March 25th, 2026 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Today's episode is brought to you by The Hokie Way. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend if you haven't already. I'm your host, Riley Klaus, and today I'm joined to my left by lead analyst and columnist, Chris Coleman. Across the way, our managing editor, David Cunningham. To my right, senior staff writer Andy Bitter, and producing the show behind the scenes, as always, is Mr. Nick Brown. Now we're going to start today by picking up the talk on spring practice for Virginia Tech football, in which the latest news was a position change, as reserve quarterback A.J. Brand is making the move to wide receiver.
I don't think that's a big surprise. When he first signed with Virginia Tech, he was regarded as a very good athlete, but a very raw quarterback. And, you know, it was said that maybe he could change positions if quarterback didn't work out. I'm glad that they didn't wait to the end of the spring. I'm glad that they went ahead and did it now, because it does two things. Number one, it pares down the quarterback reps. You can't keep repping 5 quarterbacks throughout the spring, in my opinion. That you don't get. I don't think you get enough focus on any one guy if you try to keep repping so many players. And number two, it gets him in a position where he can actually develop. If they'd waited to the end of the spring, he would be thrown into the fire in August at a position that he hadn't played before. So now he gets to get his feet wet, get some actual coaching, because this is the best time of year to learn a new position. It's really hard to do in August. So I think the timing of it is good.
Yeah, I think you look at the log jam of quarterbacks they had in that redshirt freshman class. They had 3 guys as redshirt freshmen, then Troy Hewen coming in as a freshman. Those are 4 guys that basically have the same amount of eligibility left. Something had to give there, and it always works out. It either works out through the transfer portal, which you don't have after spring now, or if you want to keep a guy, you switch positions. And you look at Brand's history here in high school. Like, yeah, he was a quarterback, accounted for 11,000 yards and 151 touchdowns in high school, but a lot of that was rushing. There's a player on staff, Vic Hall, pretty good high school quarterback, who then switched positions in college, went to the defensive side. So I guess it was a possibility, because I think Brand perhaps played safety in college, or was talked about in high school.
The original projection is if he didn't play quarterback, it would be safety.
Right. And, Franklin was asked about that, and he said, I think if you cut him open, he's an offensive-minded guy. Like, that's where his heart is on the offensive side. So I think it's a good move to try to find a way to get this guy on the field in a different capacity. And if he was just going to be 5th-string quarterback or whatever it is, he doesn't really help the team in any way. Now, receiver, I think he can if he picks it up quickly. And he looks like he's got good size and moves well, and looked like he wasn't out of place in the receivers room the other day.
Well, based on Franklin's comments, it seems like the receiver room outside of Aiden Green and Keyshawn Brown is very open.
Yeah. He's been very guarded about that, about receivers. I think there may be a little bit more. I mean, he didn't really talk about Keyshawn Brown. Is it Keyshawn or Quayshawn?
How do you say Keyshawn?
Keyshawn. Okay.
Keyshawn.
He hasn't really talked about him too much until I asked him specifically about yesterday, because I'm like, he looks really good out there. And Franklin's like, yes, he does look good out there. So him and Aiden Green, but I think the concerns are justified beyond that, because you're probably looking at Chance Wiggins and Keelan Adams as pretty big contributors, and they've never really played. I'm just a handful. Yeah, they missed all of last year, handful of snaps there at the end of the 24 season. You're asking them to play big roles. Snook Peterkin, coming off basketball, he's finally in pads the other day. He's probably going to be expected to play a big role. Outside of the long touchdown catch against UVA, doesn't really have a lot of college experience. You're seeing guys like Cam Sparks, Luke Stewie, who are redshirt freshmen, get a lot of reps in practice. I think there's cause for concern. Marlon Jackson's out for the spring. He's got his arm in a sling right now. So, yeah, I think there are a little bit of concerns about the receiver room. But I think you throw Brand in the mix, say another young guy, see what he can do, and go from there.
And Virginia Tech was as well practicing in pads recently. And what does that change in terms of the intensity level at practice?
I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're a true football player at heart, you want to practice with pads on and hit people. I think you hear it every year. You know, you get 3 weeks into August camp, and these guys are just tired of hitting each other, and they're ready to hit another team. I mean, that's what you sign up for as a football player is contact. And if you don't like contact, that's probably not the sport for you.
And that, you know, Franklin is sort of underscores his mentality, and like, this is a tough game, and toughness is, you know, toughness in the trenches, and you can't really see that until you get in pads. And there was a drill we were watching at the very end. We got about 4 periods of open practice, and it's one where all the players start like face down on the ground and then get up, and then they run into each other. It's basically just a collision
like
drill.
What they're simulating there is an outside run with the tight end leading out on an outside linebacker or a safety in space, and tight ends have to make those blocks all the time, and linebackers have to learn how to navigate those blocks. And Tech's tight ends did not block well the last few years, so to me, it's good to see some dedication to some one-on-one blocking by the tight ends, because that's a critical blocking position.
Well, we have a good picture from Ivan took one where the 2 players are about to collide. Their both eyes are closed, like about as they're about to collide. But the most animated we saw James Franklin in that clip after some language he was directing to people to hit the MFer out there. It was Jarikus Hairston.
Yeah.
Who's not necessarily known for his block. He did have a couple of good blocks last year. They used him almost as like a pulling fullback on a couple of those drones touchdown runs. But he got up and he smacked a guy going to the outside. And Franklin sprinted across the field. It's like, yeah, it's like giving him attaboys at that point. So, you know, he's really, you see how he's built this team. A lot of emphasis on linemen, getting bigger in the trenches, having a big number of guys there. You know, you look at his Penn State tenure, that's what they were known for, trench play, you know, winning games in bad weather.
And tight ends.
Not always pretty, but, gets the job done type of stuff. I think that's how this Virginia Tech team is going to be molded. And toughness and physicality is going to be part of that.
I agree on Hairston. I think maybe he looks a little bit bigger than he was. I don't know what his listed weight is now, but just, as far as the eye test goes, he looks a little bit bigger. We only got to see about 2 minutes of those drills, but I did think, he threw maybe the 2 best blocks that I saw in that drill. So that's good to see him coming along in that area of the game. And, Franklin he's regarded by almost everybody as a recruiter, right? But he's actually, he's an excellent recruiter, but he's really an old school football coach.
He likes to tell you that too.
Right, he does.
I've got an old school mentality.
Right. I mean,
I'm old school rap.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if you watch Penn State play over the years, they run over you. Yeah, they're more of like 1996 Virginia Tech than they are 2019 Virginia Tech. That's how it was at Penn State. It was also always multiple tight ends, especially like the last 4 or 5 years when Ty Howell was there.
And they have good ones.
Yes.
And I look at this tight end room. I feel pretty good about this tight end room.
I agree. So if you can look at the receivers and be like, look, if none of you guys step up, fine, we'll just take a receiver off the field and put in an extra tight end.
Right.
It's not necessarily receiver versus receiver here. It's also receiver versus tight end. Like if your third tight end is better than your third, fourth receiver and all that, then they'll just go heavier formations.
But you look at that room, Benji Gosnell, redshirt senior, sort of been underutilized, I think, over his career, but I think he has some pass catching potential there. Luke Reynolds, former 5-star guy who, Penn State fans were sort of like, oh, he's not that good. It's like, I don't know. He looked pretty good.
Crazy.
He looked pretty good. Mossing, who was the guy that
Sherrod
Koval at practice, and then he let him know about it in the end zone. It's like, okay, well, he's got a little attitude to him. I got too. Jarikus, who, great walk-on success story. Again, people are saying, oh, walk-ons are dead now. It's like, not quite. I mean, he was a walk-on, looks pretty good, caught 3 or 4 touchdowns last year. I forget exactly what he had.
Some big catches.
He had two against
Georgia.
Georgia Tech in that game, and he had some, again, like I said before, some blocks. Then even beyond that, Matt Henderson, I think, is a good up-and-coming guy. I think that room is in pretty good shape, and perhaps as good a shape as it's been in years.
They could conceivably.
St. Germain is there too.
They could conceivably play 4 guys.
Yeah,
and they've got 5. They've got 4 guys with experience plus Matt Henderson, who I think was a really talented pass catcher in high school.
And when your offensive coordinator is the tight ends coach, you know that they're going to be involved in some way. So I want to see like a 4 tight end set one time. It's like
Jumbo
14 personnel or something like that.
You want like the Maryland Eye.
Yeah, the Maryland Eye would be great.
Yeah. Well, but I do find it interesting, Chris. You wrote within the last month, maybe a little bit longer than that, you wrote something about Ty Howell and just his usage of tight ends and the usages of Penn State versus like, hey, what has Virginia Tech done lately? And I would not be surprised at all if, you know, the questions about the wide receiver room persist outside of Brown and Green. If it's like, hey, we will roll with multiple tight end sets consistently because those are from both a blocking standpoint, but also a pass catching standpoint, those are our most reliable guys. And if you can put Reynolds and Gosnell and another one of those other guys on the field at the same time, you know, alongside a Brown or a Green, feel like that might be a better option at times than hey, we're going to roll out a Wiggins or an Adams for now who don't have experience. It's an interesting dynamic.
And you guys talked about blocking and improving the trenches as well. Franklin seems to continuously harp on the flexibility on the offensive line. So we might be seeing guys at some different spots.
Yeah, I mean, we already have so far. I mean, I was surprised to see Johnny Garrett at guard when practice started. I think everybody was surprised to see that. I didn't get a chance to look at the offensive line yesterday because they were kind of far away from where I was standing. But I don't know if that starting group looked any different. But I can't imagine that it would look the exact same for the spring game as it did the first day of practice.
And even if it does, I mean, last year, where was Remack all of spring? Was he a tackle spot?
I think so.
And then he ended up not playing tackle most of the year. So you ask Matt Moore about it, it's like, I know what he could do at guard. He did that for me at West Virginia for a couple of years at guard. I need to see what he could do at tackle. You know, spring ball is the time to do that. You know, experiment with different lineups. And, you know, sometimes you get to August and it's completely different from what it was in the spring. Like, remember, what was the year where all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, like Kyle Chung is starting at right tackle.
Right. Yeah.
It
was like 2017.
Yeah. Where did that come from? I did not see that coming the whole time. Then there he is. And he was actually pretty effective.
Well, I remember when Dwayne Brown was moved from tight end to offensive tackle halfway through August, like 2 weeks before the opening game. It's like, we're going to play Dwayne at offensive tackle now. And then he started the first game at offensive tackle and he practiced it for 2 weeks. It turned out to be a pretty good career move.
What was that, about $160 million decision? I think Frank liked to mention that all the time when when players are like, I don't really want to move to offensive line. It's like, we have this guy, Dwayne Brown. And
Wyatt Teller.
Yeah. I mean, Josh Nijman recently retired in the NFL. Right. He was one who came in as a defensive lineman for like a day. Like when they recruited him, you look at him and you go, 6'6", like 300, seems like an offensive tackle.
I remember the first time I saw him, Charlie Wiles, who was the defensive line coach, was walking out on the field, and I said, man, you ought to be able to do something with that. And Charlie goes, yeah, he's pretty, but I ain't keeping him.
Well, I think when Nijman signed, I was texting with Shane Beamer was here at the time, I think. I was texting with him. I was like, they're saying defensive lineman with right now? It's like, that's all he wants to play right now. It's like they see what's coming. They see a plan for these guys that they don't see themselves. And you know, I think it's probably pretty effective if you go up to him and give him the Dwayne Brown speech. You go, this guy turned into a NFL mainstay, made a lot of money.
Right, and actually, it's funny that Dwayne Brown has a son in Texas who's a 4-star recruit who's going to be officially visiting Virginia Tech in May or June, I believe. So actually, you can bring Dwayne to campus in May, and he can tell these guys in person exactly how it was a good move for him.
Also, speaking of blasts from the past, I saw this. Do you know who the new staffer might be here? If you're going by Twitter clues,
we have another new staffer.
Yeah,
good God, how many do we need?
The name LaFonte Thorogood.
I know him very well, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was the story in LaFonte?
Well, LaFonte, he was the one that was committed to Virginia Tech.
He was,
and then
this was before I got here.
On signing day, flipped to Vanderbilt.
James Franklin
flipped
him to Vanderbilt. I went back and read the story.
That was that big quarterback that everybody lost their minds over because he went to Vandy.
It was like the beginning of the end with recruiting, and it kind of was, but not for him. That wasn't the reason. Just like recruiting overall sort of deteriorated there at the end of the beam, and they brought it back for a little bit. You look at one of the last classes they had with Kendall Fuller and guys like that. They did pretty well, but there was a lull there that they had to get through. But I remember the Thorogood was like the canary in the coal mine moment, because Kyle, he was local for the 757.
He was,
and I think Kyle Tucker wrote a lot of stuff about that.
Right. And here's the thing: Tech didn't really think he was going to play quarterback. They thought he was a good athlete. They flipped him to running back at Vanderbilt within like a month.
And then I think he ended up transferring
at JMU and where he's a safety.
I've called Emory and Henry football over the last few years, and he was on staff this past season.
Okay, so I don't know if that's official yet, but you look at his Twitter account, he's got a Virginia Tech background on it.
Yeah.
He's also following me on Twitter, so I don't know why you'd be doing that if you doesn't care about Virginia Tech.
What about the Penn State linebacker coach? He started following us on Twitter.
That's true. That's true.
Went back, but
did he have the Twitter background? I don't know.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was funny that name from the past there, because that was such a prominent moment in like Virginia Tech recruiting.
That would have been one of like the first like draft show
it was David.
Vanderbilt Franklin and Fry did.
It was brand new, and Tech fans were like, "Wow, that guy's an awesome recruiter."
Yeah.
And then he went to Penn State, and Tech fans were like, "Wow, we really hate that guy now."
And now
because he's going to kill us in recruiting.
And then he came here, and Penn State fans are like, "Wow, we really hate that guy."
Now.
So.
On the offensive line, real quick, I not just because of his last name, but I want to touch on Cunningham, because it seems like he's practicing at right tackle right now with Garrett inside at right guard. It's like if he's got an extra year of eligibility because of injuries. If he's a guy, like they were so high on him coming out of Georgia State, like it felt
Big
like
hog, right?
Yeah,
That's what they call him.
it
Hog just kept getting hurt.
Yeah, it felt like he could do something. He had potential. I think at Georgia State he played pretty well against like SEC level competition.
Yeah, he did. But had a good game against LSU, I believe.
Yeah, it's like if it can click for him, like he's an experienced guy. They don't have many that have played as many snaps as him. I'd be interested to see if he can kind of get it going.
Well, he played like 750 snaps that 1 year at Georgia State, all at right tackle, I believe. Correct. Then came here, and I think he's played 250 snaps here. It was like 230 the first year, then barely anything last year when he got hurt.
Well, it was the opposite. He didn't play the first year. He actually played in 4 games last year, and then they shut him down. If you look that up on PFF. Now, they tried to move him to guard.
Yeah.
But he got hurt even heading into like the 2024 season, was banged up. They didn't announce that. I think moving inside to guard was a little bit of an adjustment for him. I forget where he played last year, probably multiple spots considering how in flux the offensive line was. He's a guy who, like, at 6'3", doesn't really have the height of a traditional offensive tackle, but if you look at his arms, he kind of has the arms of a traditional offensive tackle, and that length is actually more important than height. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. If they don't like Garrett at guard, and they could always flip flop him back, but that's all part of the spring. Both those guys are experienced players. I think it's tough for a young guy to flip flop around positions, but once a guy has settled in and he has experience at a position, you can try him at somewhere else, and if it doesn't work out, you can move him back to his original position, and you haven't lost anything.
And plus, some other guys are out. Like Logan Howland is out this spring. I think Justin Terry, is he banged up?
He's been banged
There's guys in guys in like orange uniforms that it's not their number.
Right.
It's just like this huge guy that's wearing number 2 or something like that. It's like I don't think that's Takai Heath.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's not 300-pound Takai Heath. So it's tough to tell sometimes when you're at practice who's out.
Yeah.
Well, let's close the spring practice discussion by talking about how Franken likes to close out his practices by getting the special teams involved.
Game-winning kick, game-winning punt. I think the standard at a lot of places, they like to amp the pressure up, but I've never seen game-winning punt before. It's usually like a field goal.
Are they practicing like coffin corner punting?
Yeah, and we were out there, and I think Will Love was the kicker, and Franklin's like inches from his face, just like yelling at him and like trying to throw him off. And the players are pretty tight on him when he's doing the snap and kicking the ball, and he had a really good hang time, coffin corner type punt off it, and they went crazy, and the other side did push-ups or whatever it was, and they add a little stakes to it. It's like it's easy to kick when it's climate controlled and there's no pressure and you're just in an empty stadium or something like that. But when there's people yelling and screaming and you're on the road, there's pressure to bad snap or something like that. That's when you have to step up and do it. So they try to create those opportunities in practice. Again, I don't think that's unusual. I think Beamer, Fuente, Pry all did the same thing, but
maybe not up in their face so much.
Maybe not like that. I don't know if I've seen a punt situation. It's usually like a field goal walk-off type thing, but I thought the punt was interesting. He said they do kickoffs too.
Well, punting is winning. Ask Frank Beamer, right? I remember a basketball game in Buzz Williams' first year, and Virginia Tech was at the free throw line, and I forget which player it was. But he wasn't a very good free throw shooter. Obviously, the arena is dead quiet because Tech is at the free throw line. Dead quiet except for Buzz Williams, who's just pacing up and down the bench, just going, make it, make it, make it, make it, make it, the whole time to the player. And of course, he missed both. But the whole arena could hear it. He was saying it so loud. He was just putting pressure on his guy. He was trying to get his guys to learn how to...
Because it's not like there are fans in the arena saying anything to put... I mean, I know you're at home anyway, but like... there's no crowd.
You have to learn and teach guys to respond when there's pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that... Buzz was a really good coach who won a lot of games. James Franklin has won a lot of games, right? And I think those guys. I'm guessing if you go to a practice of a guy who's proven to have won a lot of games, you'll see a few unique things like that you might not see at some other practices.
Yeah, I think it's just them getting the most out of the players. And you said Will Love. I mean, he's a true freshman. Like, this is his first month on campus. I'm sure that you'd get James Franklin up in his face. Like, you got to make this punt to end practice. I mean, I think he as an early enrollee would be pretty intimidated.
The brothers Love don't seem too fazed by this kind of stuff. I mean, John can kick it with a marching band all around him during the game. No problem like that. That doesn't seem to bother this.
You can
this
take a pitch on
much.
an option play.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Nerves of steel there.
Well, we're going to talk more about basketball and other sports after a word from our sponsor, the Hokie Way.
This episode of the Tech Sideline podcast is brought to you by the Hokie Way. The Hokie Way supports student athletes in leveraging their name, image, and likeness to amplify the mission of charitable organizations as a way to give back to the community. Your contributions to the Hokie Way support Hokies NIL and are tax deductible. Visit thehokieway.org to learn more.
And now let's take the conversation to the hardwood, beginning with women's basketball, who did make the NCAA tournament, but they fell to Oregon in the first round, 70-60. Now I want to go to David first because you're there to experience it. What happened in this game against Oregon?
Honestly, game of runs where I thought Oregon's dynamic duo of Katie Fiso and Ahis Etute, they did a really good job of, in the first half, getting inside, getting buckets around the rim. They go on a 12-0 run in the first quarter, and it kind of looked like they were pulling away. And to Tech's credit, Carly Wenzel foul trouble, Karis Baker foul trouble. Hokie still found a way to climb back, and they were only down 2. Then it ended up being like a 4-point game at halftime. I thought the turning point was in that third quarter. You're talking about an 18-0 run for the Ducks, and that was more of an inside heavy game where Etute and some of their other post players really got going, and Tech just didn't really have a response offensively. Oregon shot almost 48%. Tech was in the low 30s or even below that. Just really, really difficult when you don't really have an answer on either end. And to Tech's credit, it picked things up in the fourth quarter with Karis Baker, but she entered the quarter with 4 points. She finished with 21. She had 17 in that quarter, and Tech had 20. But I think it kind of epitomized the season a little bit, just a little bit inconsistent. And when Carly Wenzel and Karis Baker have not been on all year, they have had quarters where they've just been really quiet. They've gone through a scoring drought, and it's been really hard to sustain. You even saw that at times, like going back to like the Miami game where they were leading and then blew the lead and lost. Like if they haven't been able to sustain offense for long periods of time with that duo, it's been really, really tough. So tough way to end the year. They pull it within 10. Oregon's I thought a much more experienced and better team, and their role players kind of stepped up in better spots.
I think there's, if you look at most of their losses this year, they always have that one lull that lasts like 5 to 8 minutes, and then they can't overcome it. It was the same way in the North Carolina game in the ACC tournament, and that's what happened in the third quarter. I thought that was an even game at halftime. I thought either team had a chance to win it, but in the end, that lull cost them. Overall, though, progress from year one to year two in the Megan Duffy era. I think the main thing in the offseason is she's got to find her own third scorer. Like, everybody she's brought into the program or recruited so far has been a complementary player. I think to really take a step forward, they need like a third very good player on that roster, besides the two that were here under Kenny Brooks. So I think that's the key to making it past the first round next year, is to find that third piece.
What is the outlook next year? I mean, what's coming back, and then where do you feel like they really need to improve it?
Yeah, I mean, the only two players they lose are Kyla Freelon and Mel Daly. They've obviously, and I look at the roster next year and go, the number one thing they need is a back to the basket post player. And I say that because Freelon was pretty good, but she came from Texas Tech, where she's undersized at 6'1". She averaged 9 rebounds per game, but she only averaged 4 and 4 at Texas Tech. Tech really got the most out of her, and I thought she played really well. But she is not your traditional, we're going to throw it inside and she's going to spin and throw up something and
she
beat
scores
someone.
Off athleticism like Toby Lowell.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was Tech running in transition or second chance points, right? And that's great to an extent, but I think Tech was really limited at times this year because it's only two really good, consistent three-point shooters where it's two leading scorers. And so if your two leading scorers are not scoring, you really have no three-point shooting that's consistent, and you really don't have a consistent inside presence. So it makes it really difficult because you're settling for a lot of these mid-range shots. That's what Mel Daly frequented. That's what Samaya Suffren likes. And as a result, you're in this weird position between three-point shooting and inside game. You're in kind of no man's land. Those aren't.
Some people think you shouldn't even take mid-range jumpers.
Correct.
Anymore. Yeah.
So I think they've got a good outlook. They can return just about everybody. They need a post player, and I think they're missing what like Lonnie White and Matilda Eck brought, that 3-point shooting, a 3-and-D player. They get Kate Sears back from injury, which I think could be a really good boost. She was top 100 freshman, suffered an injury before the season, didn't play all year. She'll be a redshirt freshman. I'm curious to see what she could kind of do. Yes, as Nick said, average a triple-double in high school in North Carolina. She was the state player of the year coming out of there. They've got two really good freshmen coming in. Kaleo Anderson, a 6-foot guard from Washington State. She's a top 100 kid. Another McDonald's All-American game nominee, along with the forward, Ariana Harris-Mott. She's 6'4", Boo Williams product from Maryland. I think they continue to bring in good players, but they do need that like third double-digit score up there with Wenzel and Baker. They need someone. They need another piece, and I think Mackenzie Nelson has been really good, but she's not really a go-to scorer. They need someone to kind of take the pressure off, or other pieces as a whole. And I think too many times this year they got into situations where it's like, we need someone to step up and get a bucket, and the defense is keying in on either Wenzel or Baker or both. And one of them is having a quiet game, and it's like, if you can't get your leading scorer free and the other one's not having a good game, who do you turn to? But to Chris's point, this was a really good year. They go from being the first team out to securely being in the NCAA tournament field. They went 12-6 in the ACC and finished tied for 5th. That is a really good ACC record. Now, I think people will look at UVA and say maybe UVA had the more impressive end to the season, considering the Cavaliers made the Sweet 16, but part of that's about matchups in the postseason. Part of that's about luck. And to be fair, they played Iowa really, really well the other day on their home floor. But I think it was a really good year, and I think the future is bright if Duffy can add a post piece, add a 3-point shooter to stretch the floor, if you can do that, I think the complementary pieces you have coming back are all pretty good. I think it sets up well.
Just need another Liz Kitley or Clara Strack.
Sure.
Yeah, no problem.
Sure.
Those things grow on trees everywhere.
Well,
like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I think you've got to make sure. Obviously, you don't have to replace those top 2 players next year. You do the year after. I remember back when Bonnie Hendrickson left, and it was a big deal. And they brought in Beth Donkenberger to replace Bonnie Hendrickson, and I believe they made the NCAA tournament in Beth Donkenberger's first 2 years because she inherited Carrie Mason, who was a really, really good guard. But then the rest of her tenure, like once Bonnie's players left the program just collapsed because Donkenberger herself couldn't fill the team with any players. So that's why I'm saying we've got to push ahead this offseason and find that third scoring piece and show that, you know, you can bring the high-level players into the program that are necessary to keep this an NCAA tournament program.
Yeah, and Duffy's recruited well.
Yeah.
You know, she's brought in a bunch of top 100 kids. But I think Sears was going to be. Yeah, I think Anaya Trent added a lot of stuff in the front court, and Imani Jenkins and her will both be sophomores next year, and I think they're good building blocks in the front court. I think Kate Sears was kind of supposed to be the kind of instant impact recruit, and she gets hurt, and you don't really have that. I like the way they've recruited, but I agree. If they can get someone, honestly, a little bit similar to Rose Mishaw in the post, somebody who maybe is a tad undersized but is comfortable going one-on-one on the block, just being able to play through that person as an outlet, I think that would be a big step in the right direction. And honestly, just having someone like White or Eck, very similar mold, in the corner where you can outlet the ball to them and they can take pressure off, and it's not a Baker or Wenzel 3, I think that would help. But all that said, they had a really good year, and I wrote about this the other day. Of course, the expectations are higher, you know, with everything Kenny Brooks did, taking the program to an ACC tournament championship and a Final Four and an ACC regular season championship. Of course, expectations are going to be really, really high, but you also lost him. He left, and he took, you know, one of the second greatest player in program history with him, and the first greatest player, ran out of eligibility and was done.
Clara Strack might have been the third best player in school history if she'd stayed.
She's very good too. But you have to replace all that. You have to start over, and Duffy is always kind of stuck with her core. That group of Eck and Samaya Suffren and Carly Wenzel and Karis Baker and Mackie Nelson, that group that kind of bought in at the very, very beginning when Duffy was brought in and introduced, she's kind of stuck with them, and that's a good core to build off of. And it's hard to forget sometimes, like, obviously she took over at the program was in a better place when she took over than when it was when Kenny Brooks took over from Dennis Wolf.
Yes.
Because as I wrote the other day, in between NCAA appearances in 2006 and 2021, Tech was 59 and 159 in the ACC. Like, this was a bad program, like bottom of the ACC, like winning like 1, 2, or 3 ACC games a season.
Yep.
Kenny Brooks stabilized it, took it to new heights, but now you're back to kind of the expectation, I think, which is making the NCAA tournament, and maybe doing a little bit more than that if you get the right pieces in. And I think Duffy has done a really good job of, I think it's a big accomplishment to get back to the NCAA tournament, and that should be the goal. Finishing right around the top 6 in the league, I think is huge. And if she can continue to keep that core together while going out in the transfer portal and getting an impact player or two, I think that would be a huge step in the right direction to kind of keep that really good trajectory going.
Is this going to be 4 1 seeds in the women's tournament? Those 1 seeds are just. Do you see that UConn Syracuse game?
Oh my God!
It was like 65-12 or something like that.
It was 45-7 at one point.
I'm looking at the lines.
The lines for the Sweet 16 games with the onesies.
UConn is or South Carolina is 17.5 point favorite on Oklahoma. Texas 14.5 on Kentucky. That's the closest of the 1 seeds.
Yes.
UCLA 18.5 over Minnesota. UConn 27.5 over North Carolina. Like the top of women's basketball just feels like they're playing a different sport.
There's a little more parity in women's basketball than there used to be, but it's grown from 4 teams have a chance to win the national title to 8 or something like that, right? The depth isn't quite.
Maybe we'll see an upset or two here in this round. If you get a 4 seed against a 1,
right,
a little bit better chance. But man, those 8 seeds. I mean, Oregon went on to play Texas and lost 100-58.
Yeah.
I mean, in an NCAA tournament, that's not a 1 versus 16. That's a 1 versus 8.
Yeah,
it's tough.
I mean, that's the thing. You win that 8-9 game, and you're excited. You won a game, and your reward is you get blown out by 40 and embarrassed.
But it's more. I mean,
even getting to the 2 line, I think it is somewhat helpful in women's basketball. You look at UVA beating Iowa. Right. Iowa didn't seem invincible. UConn feels invincible.
Yes.
They feel like they are tough.
They feel like
to knock off.
It feels like old school Sue Bird. UConn.
Yeah, maybe I'll be proven wrong here as we get to the Sweet 16 and beyond. But the first couple rounds, those top seeds look really tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean, I like Vanderbilt. It helps when you've got the nation's leading scorer, Michaela Blakes, obviously. But
and Jake
Kleiman, of course. Yes, was talking to him last night, and he's going down to Fort Worth today. But I think the top 4 seeds this year, they all have very experienced players. They've got, like, UCLA's got loads of seniors. UConn has loads of seniors. AZ Fudd, this is what happens when you build it year over year over year, and you see the group sticking together. And I'm not surprised. I mean, those 4 teams have a combined 6 losses. And Texas probably has 3 of them, and Texas won the SEC. And Texas is no slouch either. So it's really difficult, but that's kind of what you aspire to. That's what you strive to be. And the ACC got 5 teams in the Sweet 16, which I think is pretty impressive. I would not sleep on a team like Duke. Carolina has a tough matchup with UConn, but Duke is LSU, and they played earlier this year, and Duke is a completely different team since then and has played really, really well. I'm excited for the Sweet 16, and also the transfer portal when it opens on April 6th. What Virginia Tech does there will be very, very interesting to watch, because you got a lot of potential, but you've got a Duffy was not able to add a true post player in the portal last year. When I say true, I mean back to the basket post player. Kind of whiffed on some of those. And it's tough because it's a money game. You got to have the money and resources. But I think Tech is in a much better position. It's easier to recruit when you're coming off an NCAA tournament appearance.
Yeah. And you mentioned the transfer portal. That has hit Mike Young's squad on the men's side. So let's talk about Izaiah Pasha hitting the transfer portal. He played in 18 games this season for the Hokies, averaging 2 points a game.
I want to use the Pasha situation to point out some metrics here. So this is Ken Palm efficiency metrics, the difference between being number 10 and number 90. In 2006, it was 13.74 points per 100 possessions between number 10 and number 90. By 2021, that had grown to 15.28 points. By 2026, just 5 years later, it's jumped all the way up to 18.96 points. So the gap keeps widening between the top teams and everybody else. He was CAA Freshman of the Year last year, and then didn't even get on the court hardly at all for Virginia Tech this season. So it's tougher to evaluate the mid-major guys these days because the level of competition is high, because those schools, they just don't have as good of players as they used to have. The good players are finding their way up to the top these days. And Pasha's a guy who he had a great CAA tournament last year. He was awesome when Delaware made the finals with him and John Camden. But overall, regular season, he was extremely inconsistent with turnovers. He just closed the season really, really strong. I think he needed another year at that level to kind of consolidate those gains and gain more experience, as show that you're a good, consistent player. Like, he showed he had talent at the end of the year in the tournament, but he didn't show that he had the consistency. So he tried to jump up a level, and it's a big jump these days, as those efficiency metrics shows, and he just wasn't ready for it. But he's at the point where he needs playing time to improve. And so he needs to drop back down to that level again, and probably needs to stay there unless he wants to be one of those 4 teams in 4 years guys.
Well,
So it's not surprising.
yeah. Well, the difficult part is that he needs playing time to improve, but it's not like he's getting playing time behind Neoklas of Dallas and Ben Hammond.
Right.
Like that's not happening. He had 2 really good games when Tech needed him against Maryland Eastern Shore and Elon in December, and that was when Tech had a bunch of injuries, had a bunch of sickness, and Elon took him to overtime, and Pasha had 18 points in those 2 games. He also had 9 assists to 1 turnover, and he did a little bit of everything. And then in the other 16 games, he had like 9 turnovers to 2 assists, and he kind of looked like a deer in the headlights a little bit on both ends. The ball went to him, and it kind of just got stuck more so than any other player.
He dribbled over in the corner and didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
And he ended up turning it over.
and he's not really a 3-point shooter. He's more of a driver, but your spacing kind of has to be right to open up those opportunities. It just never, he never really felt like a fit. He didn't play in many ACC games, only 8 of the 18. For comparison, Tyler Johnson and Sincere Jones were both hurt for like the entirety of ACC play and played in 3 ACC games each. So, I'm not surprised. Like this was one. It was like, yeah, Pasha's leaving. I mean, it doesn't make sense for him to stick around. And really nice guy, but it just didn't really work. And I think that's the risk you take a little bit going into the transfer portal. Monty Hansberry, he's a guy who was proven at West Virginia. You knew what you were getting in him. And I think he proved to be a really good pickup. But the other end of the spectrum a little bit is Izaiah Pasha, a guy who on paper looks to be a really, really good player, has potential, very young and raw still. And when you go from a system at Delaware that I felt like was kind of open, do whatever you want a little bit, like
Yeah, that's why they weren't very good.
yeah. They kind of not necessarily a structure to an ACC program that's trying to make the ACC tournament, and you are not a focal point. You are a role player, and you have to figure out how to play in a system like that. And oh, by the way, you're still a sophomore, and you still haven't really found your footing yet. It's just a really, really difficult situation. So I think it just kind of shows what the portal can be, and again, no surprises there. It did give, as Chris and I talked about yesterday, first portal entry for either basketball team gave me an opportunity to go and create a roster management page for the offseason for both teams. We've consolidated the men's and women's roster pages into one, so you can go check that out whenever necessary. I think we'll like sticky post it or put it at the top of the basketball boards or something like that just to follow along. So first of the offseason, and 2 weeks the portal officially opens, so many more to come.
So make sure to check that out as we are wrapping up this podcast. Here are some updates from other sports since the last one. Virginia Tech wrestling finished 11th at NCAAs. Baseball was able to win an ACC series against Duke with a walk-off on Sunday to win a true rubber match before falling to ETSU yesterday. Softball was able to sweep NC State, outscoring the Wolfpack 21-3 over the first 2 games, and then walked it off on Sunday to move to 28-4 on the season. Are there any takeaways from those 3 sports from this past weekend?
I think softball, if they continue with this rate, they're putting themselves in a pretty good situation where they could potentially host a regional. And yeah, that's my only takeaway from that.
I mean, well, baseball sort of averted a troublesome situation there in the 3rd game, coming back to win that one in extra innings.
Yeah. I mean, that was a crucial series for baseball just as far. I mean, they lost yesterday to ETSU on the road, but yeah, I mean, they really needed that series. Duke is towards the bottom of the league, has a new coach because that coach went to UVA.
All Duke's players play for UVA now.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Tech had some bad errors late in that game, that 3rd game against Duke. Won Friday, lost Saturday, and then it came down to Sunday and had some errors in that game and maybe avoided disaster a little bit, just as far as like I mean, had they lost that series, it really would have hurt their RPI. But they saved it. Sam Grube, second walk-off of the season. Softball, of course, had a walk-off on Sunday too, and they swept and they continue to look really good. And you brought up wrestling. I know NCAAs weren't necessarily. I mean, it probably didn't go the way a lot of Virginia Tech fans hoped. 2 podium finishes, 3rd place and 5th place for Colin Guy finished 5th, I believe, and Aaron Seidel finished 3rd. Pretty good. This, at the end of the day, was, I think, considering ACC regular season and tournament championship, about as good of a season as Virginia Tech wrestling could have hoped. And I think you saw a lot of promise in some of those young guys just in terms of building for next year when they're going to be really good and get a bunch of recruits in.
Yeah, and got Henson coming back as well.
Absolutely.
A bunch of guys coming back. So setting up to be good next year.
Well, a reminder, as usual, you can see the Virginia Tech spring game on Saturday, April 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. As we close out this podcast, what can we expect to see on TechSideline.com?
Brandon Patterson has written a Keyshawn Brown article with a lot of video highlights and some descriptions of his game, which I'll be posting today. Will probably be published by the time you watch this video. I think I'm going to delve into the men's basketball portal just a little bit, talk about what needs Tech might have, and maybe the type of player that I think they should go for this year, when you consider what their weaknesses were this year, and then my normal Friday Q&A.
Yeah, I'll have something else from practice. Talk to Aiden Green a little bit, Kamari Copeland a little bit. I don't know if I'll combine those into one article, sort of like guys are back, or guys that chose to be back that are key pieces. Might be the way to do it, but that'll be coming up later this week.
Talking with Teal tomorrow. I don't mean to steal Nick's thunder. I'm excited to get Teal's perspective on the North Carolina situation.
And potentially the NC State
I'm more interested in NC State.
And potentially the NC State
Honestly,
situation.
That's the juicier one to me.
This coaching carousel we're recording this 9-10 a.m. on Wednesday morning, but Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah. But as of Tuesday night, I mean, this coaching carousel is just going to get so juicy, and the domino effects and the ripple effects from this are going to be very interesting because Hubert Davis is out at North Carolina. Will Wade might be leaving NC State too. So we'll talk with Teal about a lot of that stuff.
Is UNC going to continue to be like, oh, we have to hire a UNC guy no matter what?
I think they're opening it.
I don't think they have the farm system.
I don't think they do anymore. I think the farm system's dried up. Like if Wes Miller had wanted Cincinnati, then yeah, you probably go hire Wes Miller.
I think he got hired at Charlotte.
He did get hired at Charlotte.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be like, all right, we got to go with Jeff Lebo from the league, something like that. It's like, get him off the bench here. Yeah. I don't think they have the guys for it at this point.
No, but
it's probably be helpful for them to go outside the family.
Absolutely.
Finally. They've been a little too insular, and I think it's caught up to them. Unless they want to pull Roy out of retirement or something like that.
Yeah.
I think he's happy golfing right now.
There's some similarities. Like it's like Tech. I mean, it's not like the Tech has always hired a Tech guy because Justin Fuente wasn't a Tech guy, but you see some similarities with a lot of people like in the athletic department. They've been here for so long
at Carolina
and at Tech.
Oh yeah,
right? As far as UNC hiring basketball coaches, and sometimes I think it's wise to get some outside perspective and some fresh ideas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they're following the Belichick model, Phil Jackson, come on down.
Yeah, buddy.
He's won a lot. He's perfect for it.
So it sounds
He's
like
had some interesting relationships, too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Good note to end on.
A lot you guys will be able to talk about with Talking with Teal, which is one thing you can look forward to on the audio-video schedule. But, Nick, what else can we tune into?
Friday Q&A on Friday. I've been mulling over the Will Wade situation this morning, as I think everybody is. And I just want to say this is my hypothesis for LSU athletics. I think with all the voodoo and black magic down there, someone sold their soul to the devil. Because if you look at if they get Will Wade, there are 3 top head coaches in Lane Kiffin. And before that, Brian Kelly, Kim Mulkey, and now Will Wade. I think that hypothesis is slowly starting to reveal itself to be true because, man, they do not care about your past.
Tell us that you don't care about anything but winning without actually telling us, right? I mean, that's yeah.
The Will Wade hire would be fascinating because they're like, yeah, you paid recruits, but that's sort of the game now.
Yeah.
Like you were like ahead of the time
Should have
at
plenty of
that point.
experience.
So we'll look past it.
I mean, I believe he had like an FBI like wiretap scandal
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that
yeah.
school.
I know.
But all that's legal now.
I mean, it'd be like if Rick Pitino went back to Louisville.
I mean, wouldn't be a bad move.
Yeah.
Patino knows how to coach.
He
He
does.
does know how to coach.
Yeah. St. John's, Duke. That would be very exciting. Yeah. A lot going on, Riley.
That indeed, a lot going on, and Tech Sideline is a great place to catch all of the action. But thank you for watching this one, episode 478 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend if you haven't already. For Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, and Nick Brown behind the scenes, I'm Riley Klaus saying so long for now.